Hi, my name is Kyra, and today I will be discussing my C3 project with Miss Emerson, my independent study of painting using Bob Ross techniques and moods and feelings. So, why did I choose to create a study about painting? So, painting has always been something that I was never the best at, or there was always something that I struggled with or had issues with. And I really, really wanted to just practice different skills, try out new techniques, things like that. And I always had trouble with not knowing what to paint or how to make sure I can exceed expectations, make everything perfect. Um, and it was also a great way for me to relax by doing this painting study because it was my first block of the day. So I got to come to school every day and start off with painting, and it was just really, really relaxing. So I really enjoyed that. Why Jimmy? Miss Emerson, I call her Jimmy. It's my little nickname for her. But the reason why I chose her, or really asked her to oversee this study and be my teacher, and I work in her room, was because she's a great role model. We always have so much to talk about. She's super understanding, like when it comes to struggles I may have. She's like, no, I understand. She helps me overcome my issues, complications that I faced throughout the year. And she always gives me different perspectives on things. She gives me great advice. If I am struggling with something, she's like, okay, try this. Or if I think a painting is missing something, she's like, okay, well, maybe if we add this here. And we usually agree on like everything. So she's just a really great option to oversee the study for me. And she is really good at, like checking in on all my work and my progress, seeing if there's anything I need. And she always knows what to say to like help me move past things that I may be struggling with. So this is my workspace. So Miss Emerson has several other C3 students, at least 3 that I know about. So this little back orange table that she has in like the back left corner of her room, she has for all of her C3 students. So this photo here is just like my little section. I have my, like my easel, like all the materials and things I use, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I just really like how she like gave us our own little space because there is a class in there when I do my work, and I really like just having my own area I can work with without being distracted, and I can really be productive. And so I really appreciate her making this little space for all of our C3 students. So back to materials. So this little green bin was on that black shelf that was just in the previous photo. Um, and so this has pretty much all of my materials that I've been using throughout the year. So I have my acrylic paintbrushes, which are like in the center there, all different shapes, sizes, thicknesses. They all do different things. Um, I have acrylic paint here. Some paints I did use were watercolor paints. You just mix water with it, and then you can paint with it depending on what I was doing that day. In the previous picture on the easel, you could see a watercolor painting that I did recently. But I use both of those types of paints. Liquid white as a base, which is super, super important when it comes to acrylic painting because it just keeps everything, wet and is allowing for, easy blending with colors, things like that. I have my easel, which is not in this photo, but is in that previous photo, which is great for stability and just keeping my painting exactly where I need it for however long I may be working on a piece at a time. I have canvases that I use, just plain white canvases, various sizes depending on what I'm painting that day, how much space I might need, what I want the background to be, things like that. I have my plexiglass palette for color blending, which you can see in this photo, just a little square one. It's kind of difficult to see, but it's perfect because I'm able to like blend all my colors, and I can create new colors just by mixing primaries, opposites, depending on what sort of like shade or color I'm looking for. And then of course I have the green basket that Mr. Emerson gave me that I can like put everything in, store everything in. And this black shelf that it's in also has room for everything else, like my canvases and any extra paints or whatever that I might need to use. So one of the reasons I did this study was based on art therapy and perspective. So it came to my attention, thanks to Mrs Emerson, that all art is unique, and that because painting is something that like I've struggled with, I really need to paint and show like who I am through my work. And this picture over here just shows like a list of the difference between things that art therapy is based around basis like a class that you would take like at school. So one of the things is self-expression and making something like your own, and that's really important to show your like uniqueness as an artist. And every art piece is different and unique, and the artist creating it is what really makes it that way. And it's just super important to know what tools you need, what your art process will be to reflect on your work and revise it, and make sure you have a design process so that your final product is something that is really unique to you. So my learning process was a bit more challenging. I started off my year studying Bob Ross, watching his videos, analyzing his technique, figuring out what brushes he used for which thing he was painting, whether it was, the sky or blending water, creating trees, painting mountains like he is in this photo. I took notes, I watched his videos. I like know everything about Bob Ross. And so I used these techniques that he specialized in, which was really more just painting nature. And so the picture on the left is just some trees that I painted. I really just hit the ground running when I was done with my research on him. I probably watched like 10 videos of him and just took notes like crazy. And then one day I was like, okay, we're going to try it. And it was not as I anticipated. He makes it look extremely easy, but one thing that I did excel at was painting trees, especially just black trees on white paper, which is what this photo on the left is showing, because it really makes them stand out. And of course, like snowflakes, there are no like two trees that are completely identical, which is something that Bob Ross says. He always says not to worry if like your painting doesn't look exact, or if he has this one video that is like a specific tutorial that you can follow where he goes through all of his steps. And he says in the video to not worry if it doesn't look exactly like his, because everybody has different ways of painting, everybody has different techniques, and that's what makes art so unique. So some challenges that I faced were blending with liquid white, because that took so much practice. So basically, liquid white is like you paint the canvas with it, and then that way when you like are ready to paint, it lets the paint sit better. It makes it easier to blend colors. It makes it so if you like are painting for multiple days or multiple hours at a time, you can make sure that it doesn't get like all dry, or like that like the paint will smudge in a way you don't like. But that took a lot of practice to figure out how long to let it sit before you have to start, without making sure that it like dries too quickly, because if you start too early, then whatever color you're painting with will be like 2 shades lighter, because it is a white based paint. But if you wait too long and it dries too much and you go to put your paint on, it like becomes like chunky and not really the right consistency to be able to blend properly. So that definitely took a lot of practice. But after like a week or so, I pretty much got the handle of it, and it really makes painting easier. Another one of my challenges was transitioning from Bob Ross research to painting, what I discussed on the previous slide pretty much. Um, just because a lot of things that he did were more challenging than I anticipated. It was really like to watch it on video and to take notes on his technique, what I noticed he was doing with his hands, the way he was moving the brush, things like that. And then actually applying that to real life was completely different than how I expected it to be. But over time, it definitely got better. Another thing was working on different days, because with this class and the way our school schedule is, I don't paint every single day. Like Wednesdays, I don't have this class or even a free time where I can come and paint or work on a piece I'm currently working on. So when a canvas has to sit for at minimum 24 hours for like a day that I don't have my window to paint, it becomes difficult, especially if my painting isn't finished, because then when I go back to it, it's dry. So I'll often find myself having to just try and make the exact color and work with it for a piece because it will be dry. I can't really blend anything or mix it. So that becomes a little difficult. But definitely something that I've learned to manage and make sure that I spread out my time well. So I finished a certain piece or aspect of a painting in one time frame. So I make sure when I go back to this painting or whatever piece I'm working on at the time that I'm able to do it correctly without having any issues, like not being able to blend the paint that's already dried. And then one of my biggest, not struggles really, but I definitely think challenges is the best word, was just transitioning from doing my Bob Ross painting and research to my mood and feelings project. So my overall understanding of this study when I started it with Mr. Van Gogh and Mr. Emerson was why do I want to paint? Why does art make me feel good? And it was really about Bob Ross and the aspect of that he paints nature, he paints landscapes, and just painting as a whole is just very calming, which is what I talked about on the art therapy slide. It's really great way to start my day, but transitioning from doing Bob Ross to moods and feelings was kind of not how I expected, just because it was just a big change from, going from painting trees and bushes and rivers and skies and clouds to, painting daggers and butterflies and trees that were not at all like the conifers that Bob Ross was painting. So that was definitely a challenge, but I feel like after I got through the first couple weeks of that transition, then I really found a way to incorporate Bob Ross into my moods and feelings painting, which I'll show you soon. So experiences and things I learned. Um, I really struggled with finding inspiration for paintings, which is something that I said in the very beginning as to why I started this study in the first place. So one thing that I definitely learned is that inspiration strikes when it does, and you cannot rush that. You will an idea will come to you when you least expect it, and then you just need to go with it. And liquid white, I put this on there because I thought it was funny, but it is literally magic, especially for when I'm transitioning from hour to hour of painting one piece or even day to day. It is really, really amazing that it can keep your canvas just the right amount of tackiness to the point where your colors are still blendable. It's really amazing. Another thing is that it is okay to take your time while painting or creating a new piece, or when transitions from one piece to another or one art aspect to another. It's okay to take your time because you cannot rush the creative process. You need to just really step back, see what you need to do, see what you need to change, what you don't like, what you do like, and then make changes accordingly. And that's going to take time. And if you rush it, you're not going to be happy with your work. And then another thing that I really enjoyed learning is just how to paint realistic nature aspects, such as, studying Bob Ross and painting his landscapes, as well as non-nature things and aspects, which I'll show you right now. So these are some of my pieces that I created throughout this study. So one in the center, this sort of sunset with the trees, the birds, is really more of something that reminds me of Bob Ross, because I have the trees. He's very infamous for his trees. And then the two paintings on the sides are things that I did with my art therapy, which was in semester 2. So on the left side here, we have my rose dagger. And on the right side, we have my butterfly. So depending on what I was feeling on a certain day would change what I painted. So I really tried to incorporate a little bit of a nature aspect, even when transitioning from Bob Ross's work in nature to more of an art therapy perspective. I still really tried to add that nature perspective. For example, this painting on the left of the dagger was not originally going to have any nature aspect. It was originally just a dagger, and it had spotted background with some shadowing with the black base. And then Mr. Emerson was like, I feel like it needs a pop of color. So I added the vines, I added the leaves, I added the rose, and I was like, something is still missing. So then I added that stripe of a slightly lighter color that really made the vines pop, and I also added the thorns. So that was that nature aspect for that piece. And for the one on the right, it originally was just going to be those sort of orange woven vines, just as a symbol of like you don't really know what direction you're going or what's gonna happen, things like that. That's really what I was feeling that day. And then I was like starting to like paint in the center, and I was like, wait, this would look really cool if I had, some sort of aspect in here of nature. And on this day in particular, I was feeling like I was really growing as an artist, and I feel like a butterfly is a really good representation of that, so that's what I painted. And you can see that there are lots of different blends of yellows and oranges with that black body that really stands out, but doesn't take too much attention away from the like tangled vines and things that are around it that simulate those struggles. So this is, I didn't incorporate on the other slide because this was my final project. So there are 4 canvases here of a Joshua tree, and Joshua trees represent strength and overcoming and perseverance. And I just really felt like that was a good representation of all the things that I struggled with this year and then definitely persevered through. So all these things were things that I did or practiced doing with this study, which was, blending colors, having this nature aspect in my work. And then, of course, this is my ultimate challenge, was creating one photo on a bunch of separate canvases. So this was definitely difficult and challenging because I had to draw out all 4 paintings on each separate canvas, and then paint them one by one, while every so often putting them like side by side or together, so that way I could make sure I was painting in the right spot, connecting them properly, before moving on to painting a different section. And this I'm actually really proud of. I worked on it for a really long time, and I just really like that every quadrant has opposite colors. Like green is opposite from red, blue is opposite from yellow, so it makes each piece of the quadrant stand out on its own, which I really like. So this is my final project. And overall, I had an amazing experience doing this study, and I learned so much and had so much fun. I just want to give a huge thank you to Mr. Emerson for overseeing and helping me with everything, and Mr. Bango as well for helping me and allowing me to learn so much while doing this study. So thank you.